Hello, Mr. Podda.
Hello.
Welcome to Mind Matter.
Thank you for the invitation.
All right. This is Mind Matter. It's a platform for discussions of different matters that we think are relevant in the political arena. We take it and look at it from different perspectives, from the perspective of psychology, business, and even from a general political perspective. And we try to take away as much biases as much as we can, and present different opinions from different sides, including expert opinions, with an unbiased perspective. Here is Mr. Podda. He's a professor at University of New York in Prague. And welcome, Mr. Podda, to our podcast. Could you give us a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So I am originally from Sardinia in Italy. I have studied in Rome, then I moved to work in the banking sector, and I switched back to academia with a doctoral program which I completed in Manchester. And it was focused, this doctoral program, on the Czech economy, so I started traveling extensively to the Czech Republic, where I finally decided to set up my basis. Okay. Today, I work as an academic in Prague for the University of New York, for the Anglo-American University. I live far away from Prague, in Moravia, in Breslau.
Interesting.
And that's more or less my background.
Mm-hmm. Could you give us some more background about what was your Ph.D. thesis about, and about the FDI in Prague?
Yes, it was technically about the impact of host institutions on foreign direct investment in the Czech Republic.
Right.
In a few more words, how much corruption matter, how much rule of law matter, and they came up with nice conclusions in the sense that it does not matter too much.
Very interesting, very interesting. So our topic for discussion today is the Brett Kavanaugh situation. This has really started a political outcry in the United States between the Republicans and the Democrats. Let's hear your basic opinions on these first.
First of all, I agree with your point that the two sides are very much influenced by the political connotation of the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh and of the consequences that this nomination can have in the political equilibria of the Supreme Court. Now, it's before delving into the very case related to the allegations of sexual assault, it's already important to point out that it may sound strange that the appointment of a judge would alter political equilibria, because judges are expected to be impartial, neutral, unbiased, not influenceable by any sort of political background. So the very fact that both sides, Republicans, Democrats, admit that the nomination of Kavanaugh has altered disequilibria is already in itself a big problem, a matter of concern. Exactly. Actually, if I can say, it may sound provocative, but I personally like the honesty of the Americans in this respect, because they do not pretend that institutions supposed to be neutral are in reality themselves politically biased. Maybe not biased, but there is a sort of political deal. Yes, better, yes.
What do you think is the primary reason that a person like Kavanaugh is chosen by Trump to be inducted into the Supreme Court?
Exactly the point that we have made. At the moment, Trump is the President of the United States, and in his capacity, he chooses, nominates certain judges when it's time to do it, and of course, he has chosen a judge who should not be done, should not happen, but it happens everywhere, and is more somehow classifiable as a Republican. And he has also worked in the team of the President Trump in the past, Trump or the previous Republican president.
I see. Although my opinions quite vary on this, I think there are severe political implications of Brett Kavanaugh's appointment to the Supreme Court. Even the nomination, I mean. Trump, I'm not 100% certain about this, but certain things that Trump is trying to cover up is probably related to his appointment is what the information that I've gotten. I'm not too sure about it. Maybe I'm wrong.
Very possible. I've also read something similar. We don't know. Of course, I don't know personally the President Trump. I don't know personally the Justice Kavanaugh. But I would not be surprised if what you are saying is true. On the other side, it would be a bit naive to believe that only Trump, as a president of a country, can have something to cover up. So basically, can have some matters that he wants to cover up. In the sense that politics is politics. And sometimes it may sound, and it is, it may seem and it is dirty. But that's how politics works everywhere. And I'm not saying that Trump is worse or better than the others. I'm just saying that what you are saying may make complete sense, but it would not be something that has happened or would happen only with this particular president of this particular party. Could be any other president, not only in the US, but in any other country that may have reasons to somehow nominate a person in order to protect himself from future problems.
I see. But one thing that I picked up is that you really like the situation of transparency that the US has towards all these kinds of allegations that different people throw. And you think the system is quite transparent as compared to many other political systems, right?
Not necessarily. In this way, I can tell you that here in Prague, there has been 2 ambassadors of the United States who, in the course of time, declared clearly in public. It was not a mystery. They made it transparent, saying that they were not only representing their country, but they were politically nominated by the presidents. One was a Republican and second was a Democrat who appointed this particular ambassador. I'm not saying that the American system is necessarily transparent. We can refer to a book I recommend my students to read. It's called Treasure Island, which make clear how the American financial system, political system is not necessarily more transparent than other systems. But what I at least, it may be controversial to say it, but at least the Americans are making clear what others would not make clear. So our Supreme Court should not have it, but somehow has a political leaning.
I see. But as compared to many other jurisdictional systems, where it's not so clear. For example, in India, it's not so clear if the appointments. Okay, first of all, it's a self-containing autonomous system. Like there's no appointment from outside. It's like they get retired and new people from their juniors, they get appointed to the Supreme Court justice, like the main justice, Chief Justice, that is, Chief Justice of India. And so it's like an autonomous system within the Indian jurisdiction, as compared to the US, where political opponents, like they win seats and they pick their judges and appoint. What do you think is the better kind of system?
There would never be an answer, because this is something which has been clearly written by an American economist, Nobel Prize winner Douglas North. He gave rise to a school of thought. He was not the originator, but he was one of the main representatives, called New Institutional Economics. There will be nothing like a best system. All political, jurisdictional, governmental systems have their advantages, their drawbacks. And it mostly depends on the honesty of people. Now, the fact that the president nominates some members of the Supreme Court may sound astonishing, because in principle there should be separation of powers. But I can tell you that in a country like Italy, formally the president of the country partakes in all of the 3 sovereign activities, like he is in principle participating to the legislative, executive and jurisdictional activities, basically at the head of the system of courts. So, and also in Italy, the parliament appoints the part of the judges of the Constitutional Court. Should it happen or not? There is not an answer that can be clearly stated, yes, no, never. And the separation of power is something which makes sense in theory, but in practice, it's another story.
I see. Yeah, all right, now let's get into the case, that is. What do you think about the allegations that were hurled at Brett Kavanaugh? Do you think it's legitimate? Do you think it's illegitimate? Many people do think that it was a very opportune moment for Trump to nominate Kavanaugh, and at the same time these accusations to appear out of thin air, as most people think, Republicans, I mean. It's very controversial, this entire scenario, and it's splitting, and it has split, rather, the table into two very, very polarized sides. What do you think?
Also, it's very, very difficult to express a clear-cut opinion. I will try to do it. Okay. As long as allegations are not proven, Kavanaugh is innocent. We move in our societies from a principle that is extremely important. People move from a presumption of innocence. It's up to the accusing party to prove them guilty. This has not happened. Had it happened, I don't know what, but I really don't know whether or not an episode occurred almost 40 years ago when both of the parties were not in their adult age should matter now if we consider appointing or not appointing a person as a judge of the Supreme Court. I don't know if such episode, had it happened, should matter. And I cannot really express an opinion because I see pros and cons. But as long as the accusation, and it would be a crime, because assaulting a person, and it's not something that can be contextualized, because sometimes, sometimes there is a border between trying to, let's say, push a girl and really assaulting her. According to the story that we have heard from Dr. Christine Ford, this was really an assault. It's not something that could be somehow presented as maybe an extreme way to seduce her. No, if he has really forced her to the bed, attempted to undress her, and covering her mouth in order her not to be able to scream, this would be an assault, and as such, an unjustifiable crime. Period. No justifications for this. Still, it has not been proven. And as such, there is not only no way to criticize the fact that Kavanaugh has been confirmed in spite of the accusation or allegation. But at a certain point, Kavanaugh would have the full right to call Dr. Ford to respond of her allegations in front of justice, because people that launch an accusation, if they are not able to prove it, should compensate the person against which the allegation has been raised. And there are two different consequences if we talk about defamation. Can have criminal consequences and civil consequences.
Could I please say something else? Don't you think it's also important to be more empathetic towards, I understand the rule of law is strict, it cannot be amended or moved according to the needs of people. But don't you think it's required, empathy is required when considering especially these kind of crimes? According to her statement, she did not want to talk about this for a long time because she tried to repress it and did not tell anybody about it. And also that she told her therapist, although there's again no evidence for that, the therapist was supposed to give their notes and that has not happened. Although, in my personal opinion, from a psychology background that I'm coming from, I believe that it's more necessary to be empathetic towards such people and try to understand. I know again that there's no evidence for the claim, but the empathetic approach is required in such kind of crucial circumstances, what I think.
Then the empathetic approach should be offered to both parties.
I see.
In the sense that there is a reason why the law states what it says. It's not that we have just a cold principle which is just theoretical and people are presumed to be innocent just because we like this idea and we don't consider that this can have controversial effects in practice. The fact is that false allegations exist. We have not been there, neither you nor me. Yes. We have not been at that party in the month of July 1982. You were not born, I suppose.
Yes, for sure.
I was born, but I was not yet in the age I could attend parties. So I don't know what has happened in that room. And there is a possibility that Kavanaugh has really assaulted Dr. Christine Ford. So maybe Dr. Ford is really saying the truth. But there are also false allegations. There are cases of people, in this case we are talking about women, sexual assault, who have invented an assault that has never happened. And these things have happened. False allegations are not the fruit of fantasy, can exist. And when you see that this happens at the moment when a person is going not just to be nominated as a member of the Supreme Court, But his nomination would have tremendous consequences as for the very political connotation, of the Supreme Court. Then there is a doubt that all can be a sort of conspiration against the appointment of this person. Whether this is the case or not, I cannot know. Yes. If Dr. Ford has really been assaulted or not, I don't know. What I know is that because of the fact that false allegations can exist, we move from the idea that the person who is accused is presumed to be innocent unless proven guilty.
So you're saying that we should be equally empathetic towards Brett Kavanaugh. Now like it gets a little controversial, I think. So a lot of Democrats and like their supporters, obviously, they believe that irrespective of if he did the crime or not, just his presentation, just the way his demeanor was at the hearing, at the congressional hearing, is enough to state that he should not be appointed as the Supreme Court judge. Just his social demeanor, the way he was acting. This does not, for example, he was asked if he has alcoholic tendencies, and he asked.
He lied.
Yeah, exactly. And he replied saying, "Senator, do you have alcoholic tendencies?" Like, this is direct ad hominem attack. There's no reason for this, and so this brings into question his credibility as a judge itself. And if he is found to be incredible, not credible as a judge, then should he be appointed as a Supreme Court judge is quite a point.
That's a very good point, in the sense that I've never said I liked Justice Kavanaugh. And your point is correct. So irrespective of what has happened or has not happened at that party in 1982, the very way where he behaved during the very moment when he was hurt, what we discover about him, make him extremely controversial. In fact, he is a very controversial member of the court. That's a fact. But there is, finally an authority that after hearing all sides, after evaluating all arguments, pros and cons, come to a solution. Honestly, after hearing his own defense, probably I would not have voted in his favor, irrespective of the fact that he may really be innocent. He may, maybe not, but maybe he may really be innocent regarding the various allegations. But it's not about what we think we should have been nominating and confirming him, yes or no. Of course, his appointment is controversial, but at the end there has been an authority, I think the Senate of the United States, correct, which has taken a decision. And we like the decision, we don't like the decision, we have the right to say the appointment was controversial. It was. But at the end we have to respect the choice of people that have the title, the authority, the capacity to somehow put a conclusion to the story. And they were also very much split up, because I think it was 50 and 48.
Yeah, but that's also the split between Republicans and Democrats in the Senate. It's 51-49
with one Republican that did not vote for him and one Democrat, yes. No, that's obvious.
So that's the thing. So, the party which is in power, should they be able to take such decisions even if they have such a small majority? Because, will it actually come into fruition that this person comes into power and applies non-biased judgment based on his demeanor, just the way he presented himself? Again, so I'm not convinced.
Fine. I would myself put a qualified majority of 2/3 of the persons entitled to vote. So if I was writing the rules, I would make sure that such an important decision cannot be taken by a tiny majority. I would set a sort of 2/3 or 3/5 in order to prevent what you have exactly said. But that's not the American system. And even if we consider that the choice of the president, Trump and Hillary, came very close to each other. The very George Walker Bush at the time in 2000, the two contenders went very close to each other. So the same was also in the case of Kavanaugh. There are rules in the U.S. and the simple majority was requested, and it was achieved. If I was the one devising these rules, I would make sure that the judge should be somebody super partes. Yeah. So at least a majority of 2/3 or 3/5 in order to prevent that the nomination and the confirmation takes a 100% political connotation. So I agree with the principle. But as long as the rules are what they are, we cannot change the rules retrospectively.
Okay, let's sort of come at it from another angle. Let's assume that what Brett Kavanaugh was saying and Mrs. Ford, Dr. Ford was saying had some kind of truth to it. Like both of them, what they were saying had some kind of truth to it. What do you think should be the kind of jurisdictive idea between people who are under the influence of alcohol? In the sense, should they be given the same consideration under law as those who are not under the influence of alcohol? I know it's a very controversial point.
It's very controversial. Answer, no, but they cannot escape all responsibilities just because they were drunk. And it also depends on the extent of the crime. So a crime like really attempting to rape a lady is a serious crime. Being drunk or under the effect of drug cannot be an excuse. If we talk about a minor fight in the street, then we can say, okay, you have been drunk, this time we don't want to punish you, but for the future, be aware that you need to follow a program. And if you don't follow this program and you are caught drunk again, at that point, you pay for what you do and also for what you have done. But we are talking about minor crimes. As for a major crime, I understand that people under the effect of drug or under the effect of alcohol may not be able to control their actions. On the other side, if we talk about a major crime, a rape is not a joke. People may never recover from it. And then it would not be, I think, appropriate to exclude responsibility just because a person has been acting under the effect of alcohol. Eventually, I would have other comments to make regarding the very fact that people at that age have parties where there are no adults watching over them and where they can take alcohol, they can take drugs. This should not happen.
Yeah. So you think like there should be supervision at all times during
100%.
that particular age. But that's the thing. Children, I mean, like adolescents are quite elusive in this kind of way, and they figure out their ways.
Some way maybe, of course it's true. I've also been a teenager. But on the other side, we cannot have a sort of party that lasts all night or more or less all night when teenagers are left on their own and they can drink and they can consume drugs. Well, it would be dangerous even for adults, for teenagers even more. So, of course, eventually we may even say, let's say that the allegation was grounded. Let's say that Kavanaugh have really tried to assault Dr. Ford. In that case, on the one side, we could say, yes, he was also young, he was also 17 years old, and he was also under the effect of alcohol. But we should not forget that in case the accusation was grounded, that lady has suffered a trauma that may last for a long time or eventually their whole life. So I don't think that just intoxication may be a complete excuse. On the other side, the society should not allow teenagers to experience this sort of atmosphere where everything can happen because of alcohol, because of immaturity.
A lot of people, a lot of Republicans also say he was young, he was stupid, he was doing some petty nonsense. But he's a grown man now. So how does personality, and I'm coming from a psychology perspective right now, we all believe in a personality which changes over time, that people can learn and change their personality over time. So how do you think this should be taken into regard with law?
This is what I was telling you at the beginning. I don't study psychology, I've never studied psychology. From the psychological point of view, I would not be competent to answer. It's clear, minors, people that are not classifiable as adult, have a sort of limited legal responsibility, and this makes also sense. A guy who is 16 that kills another human being will serve his term, but his term would be far lower than what would happen if the guy was 19. It's clear, being a minor somehow protects when the minor commits a crime. On the other side, we cannot also forget the fact that if there is a crime, there is also a victim. Yes. And when there is a crime, the crime must be proven, that's clear. People are presumed to be innocent, but when there is a proof, then there is a victim. And the fact that the author of the crime is young does not mean that the victim does not have the right to be somehow compensated, assisted, And the society needs also to give a lesson to the criminal, also in order to prevent
Future crimes from
future
happening.
crimes, at least as long as this can be done.
Very interesting points that you bring up. Yeah, another thing that I wanted to talk about is, for example, just the divide that the Democrats and the Republicans have. We already sort of brushed this through. In some ways, I feel the Democrats are more empathetic towards the whole situation and are asking for a fair consideration from. That's what they consider is fair consideration from the side of Dr. Ford, the psychologist. Don't you think that it was quite opportunistic of her to come at this very moment and then ask for some kind of fair consideration?
We will never know. For
It's an allegation that like a lot of people have put on her, and I don't know which side to take. This is a like completely political kind of circumstances, and there is no truth to it as long as there is no evidence, as you mentioned earlier. But still, it is a bit opportunistic. Can you deny that?
It can be. No, I cannot deny that it can be, but we don't know if it is. So the benefit of doubt accrues also to Dr. Ford, in the sense that maybe the wall was part of a conspiracy, but maybe she has really been assaulted. And I think that as men, we cannot fully understand what can happen in the brain of a woman that goes through this type of experience, assuming this has happened to Dr. Ford. But anyway, it has happened to others. So it may not be easy to immediately talk, ask for the assistance of the police, go into a hospital, getting a medical certificate. It may be that the trauma is taken, is internalized. The person who has suffered this experience does not want to take it out. But it can be that even a moment when you see that the person who has assaulted you is becoming a judge, maybe the moment when at that point you decide to take it out. Of course, let's make also another point. The case of Dr. Ford, she had already started informing the Washington Post about her experience, I think before the nomination of Kavanaugh, but it went public when Kavanaugh was going to become a member of the court. Of course, there is always the suspicion that everything has been done opportunistically in order to prevent his confirmation, in order to prevent a change in the political equilibrium of the court. On the other side, it is also possible that Dr. Ford has gone, as a student of psychology, you can teach me, she has somehow tried to forget about the experience, but when she saw that that person that, according to her story, has assaulted her, at that point she was not able to take it inside herself any longer. She decided to bring it out. Obviously, from a psychological point of view, this can be the case.
Yeah, so from a psychology point of view, as far as my knowledge on this topic goes, there are many types of defense mechanisms that Sigmund Freud mentioned and his daughter Anna Freud mentioned. This type of defense mechanism is what is called repression. So it's basically trying to forget about something as if it did not happen and trying to bury it inside the mind. The thing about these kind of this particular kind of defense mechanism is that it will manifest itself sometime or the other, even though, and that's the problem with the legal implications of this kind of thing, you know, because if you try to bury it in your mind and pretend as if it did not happen, there will come a time when she's reminded of him or something like this, that it will come back, it will resurface within her mind, and this will be a very traumatic experience for her. So that's also another reason why I said maybe it's good to consider from her perspective. Yeah.
We consider it. But on the other side, we cannot forget that, I'm not saying this is the case of Dr. Ford, I really don't know. We cannot forget that there are also false allegations. So, unfortunately, we cannot find a solution in the sense that if the allegation is grounded, the fact that she cannot prove it doesn't mean that she does not suffer. On the other side, we also cannot reverse the onus of proof. And we cannot expect a person to be able to demonstrate what he has been doing on any day of 1982, now that we are in 2018. And for this reason, we need to find a compromise. I have my idea, as long as ideas, I know that it's not a perfect solution, but better I don't know. We are two genders, male and female and male. On the one side, a man that really rapes a woman has no excuses.
Yes, of course.
He was drunk, under drugs, doesn't matter. Never had a woman in his life, could not resist, doesn't matter. But really doesn't matter. On the other side, and it's up to the man to control himself, which may not be easy. On the other side, especially with alcohol, on the other side, a woman that goes through this experience, as difficult as this may be, there is the police. There is the emergency of the hospitals. And if the woman who has been attacked recur to these services immediately, bringing the evidence is easier. There is a case which has happened in Italy. Various cases, but one in particular. It happened with two American ladies declaring that they had been raped by two policemen. Two different versions, because the version of the policeman, no, it was consensual. In reality, the American ladies declare we were completely drunk and they abused us. But as they went immediately to report the fact, it was possible to check the level of alcohol in their blood, so that an investigation followed. And now these two policemen are being tried. The first has been convicted. There will be an appeal, and we don't know what happens during the appeal. But you see, reporting the crime immediately, reporting the facts immediately has its benefits for both sides.
I see. Okay, now let's sort of take this from another angle. See, the thing is, these kind of allegations and these kind of problems, it can happen anywhere at any time. And like you said, as long as, since we follow the rule of law, and it so happens that the accused, if they don't have enough evidence to accuse the accused, then the accused stands not guilty. Yeah. But what do you think the implications of this kind of problem in these kind of circumstances are in the modern workplace?
That the victim, if it is really a victim and cannot prove the crime, not only does not see the crime vindicated, but in addition maybe has to pay compensation to a person who may really be a criminal. But on the other side, and I repeat it once again, if we reverse the onus of proof, we risk that a person who is innocent is actually declared guilty. And this is something that our Western society has decided to avoid. So the principle is better a criminal free than a person who is innocent in jail. That's the principle that somehow shapes our systems of criminal law. And as I told you, we are two genders, and we need to find a compromise. We cannot have a society which is man-centered. We cannot have a society which is women-centered. So a possible compromise is exactly this, as it happens.
Many people would actually argue that the current societal system is more man-centered than women-centered. But
I would not be so sure, because I can tell you that, for example, if we look at historical data, the large majority of people who died during war were men. We could find many pros, many cons, and at the end, I even don't know to what extent biology matters. And as I'm not a biologist, I'm not competent to express myself in the area. But as I told you, on the one side, there cannot be justifications of any type for any sort of rape. On the other side, the person moves from a status of presumption of innocence. If we rediscuss this point, then we have to rediscuss too many things. Of course, there is always the risk that a real victim does not receive justice. But the real victim has always the possibility, as difficult as this may be, to somehow ask for the immediate intervention of the authorities.
No, but my question was related to the modern workplace and how these kind of circumstances might affect the hiring process within the modern workplace, like offices and HR departments in general.
Are you asking me if women can be blackmailed when they are applying for a position?
Yes.
Of course.
And don't you think that's like going to be a very bad implication?
Of course. Of course. On the other side, I see another side of the story. Of course, there can also be, and there are, women that try to use their physical appearance to seduce the boss and to influence themselves the hiring process or the promotion process. So it's not always, in many cases, it's really the man who abuses his position to somehow force the will of the woman. But there can also be, and there are cases when it is women that either because they are really attracted by the boss or maybe because they find the advantages in seducing the boss, they may really try to do it. I can guarantee you, I've seen it happening. I've been spending some time in my life close to people in power, parliaments, other types of institutional buildings, and many of these men in power were abusing their power. But in many other cases, they were all abusing their power with innocent women that were victims. But in other cases, they were technically surrounded by women ready to everything, eventually taking the initiative, in order to have unfair advantages, to gain unfair competitive advantages, and getting promotions, getting positions that they would not have otherwise deserved.
I see your point, but I come from a very different kind of culture, and the setup in corporations there are very, very different. So I'm not sure if it happens with the same frequency outside Western society. Do you have any opinions about that?
I should have been living in India too, but maybe you are right, in the sense that, from what I can say, but without any real deep personal direct experience, the Indian society may be a bit more traditional. Maybe women would be more shy, less ready to try to get themselves an unfair advantage over others, and others can be men or women, other men or other women, using their seductive capacity, say this in professional or diplomatic terms. But in the West it happens.
You're sure that it happens in
Yes,
the West?
yes,
100%. Sure. Okay, that's very interesting. So then you're definitely saying that these kind of things can have, for example, this particular Brett Kavanaugh situation can have a direct implication on hiring women in the West, since there's already a gender disparity in many hiring processes. I mean, a lot of people claim that women are not given the equal opportunity, which I'm not sure of. The equal pay thing, I'm pretty sure that it's not exactly equal. Women get a bit
less.
Yeah, a bit less than men, and that should be as much effort should be put to equalize that, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, but this, I think, will contribute to corporations hiring lesser women, as you've mentioned, if that's the case.
Well, there are always pervert results of changes made with good intentions. As for women at work, there is a biological factor we cannot eliminate. Women give birth. This means that for a certain period of time they cannot work.
Not necessarily. If they
necessarily.
choose to not choose the line of family, and
for a certain period of time.
And this is the whole enlightenment point, right? Like, women don't need to be bogged down by family, and
that's where I want to go. Still, biologically, it is not men that get pregnant; it is women. Sure. And this state of pregnancy entails consequences, because the woman cannot work as efficiently as she could do if she was not pregnant. And there is also a moment after the birth of the child when the woman needs to be with the child, breastfeeding and all of the psychological and physical consequences of giving birth. This unfortunately has implications at work, because companies want their workers to be efficient. And I can tell you also that it is often women hiring managers who look at the fact that a potential candidate, female candidate, may soon leave the company because of a maternity leave. So it's not just men that discriminate women when it's time to hire. It can also be women discriminating other women.
It's just purely based on money then?
It's based on the fact that business thinks in terms of a business logic.
So it's more favorable for men, is what you're saying?
Of course, because we don't get pregnant. Women do. And this is a disadvantage, which cannot be completely cured. Yes, we can find the solutions that can somehow soften the problem, But still there will always be a sort of problem, always the need to somehow intervene. We can have a kindergarten company, kindergarten, flexible working time, sure. On the other side, but the problem exists, and it's not a fault of women. On the other side, when I am in this country, in the Czech Republic, I see that many women take the highest possible period of maternity leave, 3 years per child, and they may have 2-3 children. They can schedule the maternity leaves in order that I personally know ladies in a managerial position, they left their job when they were in their late 20s, early 30s, they came back 10 years later, more or less. So I don't know if, and actually I don't think that this is really necessary to take such a long maternity leave.
Okay, so now we're getting into a different argument. It's that how much is the amount of time required to actually tend to a child? I think that's actually quite high, because children, okay, now this is again my perspective, are not given enough attention during their developmental times, and this can actually have other implications on our society, because if children are not given enough attention during their developmental times, that can manifest in different forms. Them not having empathy towards the world, like this basically goes into the direction of creating psychopaths in society. So if mothers tend more to children, then definitely it can have a healthier childhood, and because of that a healthier development, which will actually help society. I know it does not have short-term benefits, this whole maternity thing, but doesn't it also matter that we're supposed to put in enough thought for society as a whole, rather than just saying the company will not make profit right now, and because of that we can't hire them, and because of that the amount of leave that women should take should be extremely low if they want to be successful in career. I think it's not considerate enough to say that we should not consider them having a longer period of maternity.
Of course we should consider it, but we should also be aware of the fact that each choice has implications. I understand your point. You are correct. Look also at another perspective. So you have 2 candidates, and both of them could be ideal, let's say, marketing manager. You know that one, the man, will work for the company for the whole length that you need him to work for. And you know that the lady, if you hire her, she may disappear for 10 years. I understand your point, makes sense. I'm not saying that what she does is not worth it. It's very worth it, helping a child to develop. On the other side, look also at the company's perspective. What should they do?
I think they should be incentivized by taxpayers' money. That's another whole, that's my opinion.
That's fine, but we also, fine, and it can be done. Kindergarten at work, the possibility to take the baby at work, if possible, if healthy for the baby. Of course, there are potential solutions. But as we are now in the Czech Republic, can you imagine a person leaving the company when she is, let's say, 30, and coming back when she's 40? It is 10 years of experience, working experience, that have gone. And also the efficiency is questionable after such a long delay. So maybe we could find a compromise between the need of the child. I'm not saying that we should do like I have heard they do in the Netherlands. I have heard that it's just for 4 to 6 weeks of maternity leave. I don't know if this is true or not, maybe. But if this was true, this would be an extreme. But I also think that disappearing from companies for 6 years, 7 years, is something that I understand the need to consider the interest of the child. But and if you do, and the society in general. But if we want to fight against the state of disadvantage of women at work, we should also consider that long maternity leaves may matter.
I see. We have diverted quite a bit from our main topic. Anyways, I think we have come to a good conclusion. Thank you so much, Mr. Podda, for coming to Mind Matter and improving our insight about the Brett Kavanaugh situation and different other topics as we discussed. Thank you so much.
Many thanks.
We will keep you in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much.